And a good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining for this Tropics Around Dusk. Not quite dark just yet, and not quite the afternoon. So we're doing this right around dusk hour, right? The sun's going down. It's about to be dark, so later on we'll have the tropics after dark. But right now we are evening forecasting. So thanks for joining. How you doing, Blake? Good to see you on here. So we are of course tracking still potential tropical cyclone number 6 out there in the Caribbean, just southeast of Puerto Rico right now, and it is still traveling to the west pretty quickly at 17 or 16 or 17 miles per hour. I'll check out that in just a second. But there hasn't been too much change from last night as far as the formation and the presentation of this system. It's still struggling a bit, and as I mentioned last night, I thought it was going to struggle or not really, explode into anything that big because of the fact that it's not in perfect, environment for strengthening right now. Lots of dry air around it. If you followed the page, obviously you saw that picture I posted earlier. You could see the dust getting into the core of the system there, and that's why a lot of the eastern side was just kind of void of any storms there. And look at the, look at the satellite right now. You can see at the beginning of the loop, it looks like it's impressive, and then by the end, it kind of goes, zap right there at the end. Kind of loses a lot of the convection there. So the bottom line is it's still not in a perfect area for strengthening. That's not to say it can't still become Fred. Over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. It probably will, honestly. It's not going to take much. Once it just has a circulation, low-level center, winds are 40 miles per hour, or 35 actually, but once it gets that low-level center and it's, a closed low, they'll go ahead and upgrade that. So that'll probably still happen, but again, I don't expect much strengthening over the next couple of days, as this thing's still not going to be in perfect area to see that happen. So that's a look at the satellite, and this is a look at the radar for the Puerto Rican radar, and you can see, lots of rainfall well south of it, but you see just south of the island. I really think that's kind of maybe where the center is located, and there's not much going on there. So that just tells us that there's still dry air wrapping into the core, and it's still not able to really wrap all those storms around the center like we usually see with one of those classic tropical systems. So we're just not there yet with this one. That's a good thing. But the indications are that if this thing survives down the line, then we could see, maybe some issues later, for the Gulf Coast. But that still remains to be seen, because this thing does have a lot of obstacles to go through before we have to worry about it later on. There's a look at the big picture. Now, one thing you'll notice, this is PTC 6, potential tropical cyclone number 6 right here. And then behind it, we have Invest 95 that we'll be watching over the next week or so too. That one's way out there though, so not really concerned with that at the moment. So we'll talk about just number 6 right now. And again, this is going to be moving in the general west to west-northwest direction, over the next few days. It'd be interesting to see the interaction that it's going to have with the islands moving forward, because that could impact its future strength and also maybe its future track in the long run. Sometimes when these things struggle a little bit, they get a little bit weaker. Sometimes we can see these things trend a little more to the west than originally thought. So there's a lot to still be seen with this system, especially in the long term. Now, currently on the, let's see, this map right here, the Mardi Gras map, as I like to call it, a lot of dry air around the system. It was wrapping in this way, and that's kind of keeping the system at bay currently. And there's also a little bit of a spin up here. You can kind of see it. That's an upper level low in that direction. And as it moves a little bit to the west as well, as long as that's in place too, as this thing gets a little bit closer, this is going to cause some wind shear, some south to southwest wind shear on this. So that's another thing to watch for as this thing moves to the west. So the bottom line is it does not have perfect conditions to strengthen over the next, couple of days or so. And that's, that's a good thing, right? The islands right now are obviously getting some tropical weather, but nothing devastating expected for this island chain as it moves to the west. So certainly good news there. They're going to deal with some squalls, some rainy conditions, and some tropical storm force winds. But these regions down there, this is something they can handle, without a doubt. So that's good right now in the short term, that it does not look like it's going to strengthen too quickly. Let's take a look at the GFS model and see what it's talking about here and what it's saying. So we move this forward, and here it is right here, right? Just kind of an open wave right now, not a true depression at the moment. As we move through, does it become a depression or a storm later tonight? Maybe. Let's move this forward. As it goes over Hispaniola, this island right here is mountainous. It's got a history of tearing things apart as it moves over it. So, even if it does get sort of developed before it gets there, this will knock it right back out. And it becomes sort of an open wave, right? There's not much there. Here it is in this area. And this is by Friday morning. And we're just seeing something kind of drifting. Now, I think this area right here will be key to see what happens as it comes off of Hispaniola. Does it stay north of Cuba and sneak through here? That would be, that wouldn't be the best thing. This is very warm water at this point in this area. So, the key to watch out for is this eastern Gulf and this little area through the Florida Straits right here, right? This is where that water is very warm and hasn't really been tapped this season too much. So if it makes it between Florida and Cuba there and hooks to the northwest into that eastern Gulf and it stays in the water that entire time, then we could see some issues in the long term, maybe even a hurricane to deal with later, late in the weekend and into early next week. So that's a scenario that we got to watch out for. But again, that's a big if because it's got a lot of obstacles ahead of it. So here's the GFS. Notice as we go into Saturday evening, we start to see something emerging here off of Cuba and then into Florida, probably a depression or a storm at this point. But the GFS right now keeps it over land, so this would not strengthen too much. Obviously, Florida would have nasty rainy weather at this point, but it wouldn't strengthen too much. And even if it gets back into the Gulf at that point and moves to the north by early Monday, it's not going to have enough time to really do much as far as strengthening goes. So not the worst track if that would play out, right? Look, somebody's going to get a lot of rainfall from this, but if you can get out of this with just a nasty day or day and a half of a little bit of wind and a little bit of rain that doesn't flood, then that would probably be the best case scenario with this, right? If it's a little bit different, a little bit of a different track and it gets back into the Gulf and, has a chance to develop a little bit more, well, that wouldn't be the best track. And that would be a track that takes it kind of like this, a little bit more into the Gulf, off of the Florida Peninsula and then into maybe the Florida Panhandle. That track would probably allow it to strengthen a bit, possibly to hurricane strength. So it's a couple of different scenarios here, and we're just going to have to watch this thing play out, over the next few days. This map illustrates clearly what's going on as far as, the dry air. And, you can see the dry air wrapping into it. It's kind of what I showed you in that picture, earlier today. And it's going to continue to deal with that for a little while longer, even into tomorrow evening. It looks like tomorrow evening into early Thursday, we start to see that dry air maybe not bothering it as much and not getting into it as much. However, at that point, it moves over Hispaniola, and that will affect it a bit and probably knock it down a little bit. So at this point, we just have a plume of moisture moving to the west. And, into Friday, that's what this model indicates. That would be the case, and it doesn't really start to get its act together until we get off of the islands into the Florida Straits and then into this area, right? But what does it look like at that point? Hard to know, right? Hard to know at this point. But it does look like it's going to round the the base of that high pressure somewhere and then move somewhere into the eastern Gulf, and probably impact some folks in Florida. The key remains is how strong is it going to be, and where are we going to see that happen? Does this thing even survive the trek through the islands? I've seen that happen where it just doesn't survive it. So that's another scenario. This is what the European model is indicating. Kind of the same thing through the islands there. European takes it through that track I just kind of talked about, right? North of Cuba, through the Florida Straits, south of Cuba, and then back into the Gulf, and seeing some strengthening there a bit before it makes landfall here, just east, maybe very close to Panama City, by Monday morning. So that's a scenario there that maybe we don't want to see. We don't want to see a lot of time in the Gulf of Mexico for this thing to be able to develop in the open water, right? And that could very well happen. Here's a look at the models, and look at the agreement here for the next 24 to 72 hours, right? They're very tightly packed, and that shows there's a good consensus that looks like that will be the track. Now, one thing to look for in the near term, right now the National Hurricane Center has this thing moving west at 17 miles per hour. Here's their official track, and notice really starting really right now, we're going to need to see this thing, if this track's going to verify, we're going to need to see this thing start to move to the northwest soon, or west-northwest at least, for this thing to start going in that direction. It's continuing west right now, and as long as it's continuing to the west, Well, obviously it's not going to go more north. So we have to see how long that westward track continues, and when it starts to move to the west-northwest, and kind of see. Because the early portions of these tracks are kind of important, because the more west it goes before turning north in the early part, would force a track to maybe go a little bit to the southern part of the track instead. So something to watch for, in the short term, to see just how long that westward motion continues from the National Hurricane Center. They currently, as of 7 o'clock, still have it going west at 17 miles per hour. So we'll see if that changes by 10 p.m. and then into the late night hours. But for now, it is still going pretty quickly off to the west on the southern side of that high pressure. It's just riding along the southern part of that high. So here's a look at the official track. This was from 4 p.m. They don't update at 7. They do every 6 hours. So we'll get it at 4 p.m. We'll get another one at 10 p.m. But here's a look, and I think this probably shifted a little bit to the west since last night. I think last night it was kind of curving a little more this way, but with some of the modeling today that came out, it does look like it's going to go a little bit more west. At least that's what we know right now. So right now, anyone from the Florida Panhandle all the way to the west down the peninsula here would be the most concerned at this point. But that's not to say if you're over here, Mississippi Gulf Coast, Alabama as well, Mobile area, Gulfport, Biloxi, all these areas over here, still got to watch that, because notice, if it does take this westernmost portion of this cone here, maybe not a likely scenario, but, where would it go at that point, right? Would it hook this way? So you're still in the cone, hypothetically. If we'd extend it, you'd probably be in there. So it's a wide cone right now, but everyone from, like I said, the western portion of Florida Panhandle, Pensacola, all these areas, Panama City, Destin, all these areas over here especially, and then going toward the Big Bend, Panama City, and down the eastern side that were affected by Elsa. All of us got to watch that along the Gulf Coast, extending all the way to the west, because there are some scenarios that I've seen that take this thing a little bit more to the west. But right now, this is the current modeling of it. And there are really a lot of clusters here close to Panama City, right? And so that's really where the track takes it currently. If you look at where the center would be, it would be very close to that area moving in there. So that's the best thing we have right now as far as, what we're looking at, modeling wise. But you see the UK model and a couple of others here taking a little bit more to the west probably before hooking, and there's some over here to the east as well. So that's why the cone is the cone, how it is right now, right? That's kind of like where we're looking right now, right there. So that's the best we can do at this point, right? And because there's just so many obstacles coming up. Got a lot of islands going to move over. It's not even a tropical depression or a storm yet, right? The center is not very, it's not a very well-defined low-level center currently. And there's a lot of obstacles. It's got to go over Hispaniola. All the models right there, you can see, take it over Hispaniola, Dominican Republic there, Haiti, over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. And that's going to knock it around a little bit. Sometimes you can see centers relocate, more to the south, more to the north. Sometimes it kills them all together. So lots to determine in the next 24 to 48 hours or so. But it looks like by the 72 hour to 96, what would that be like? Maybe Friday-ish. Friday, Saturday, I think we'll know a lot more when it's north of Cuba and maybe about to enter the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Let's see what condition this is going to be in, moving forward, because that's going to be key to the future track of this thing. What does it look like coming off of Cuba? What does it look like going into the eastern Gulf? Does this thing have a chance to get to a hurricane? Certainly does. If it would take a track kind of right there, you see these models, they're keeping it, they're sending it over Hispaniola soon. But then after that, a lot of the models are keeping it north of Cuba and avoiding the island, at least the center of it, avoiding the island, and then sneaking between Florida and Cuba there. That would not be the best track, because it would stay over water and could have a chance to strengthen a little bit. So something to watch for over the next few couple of days. As far as the future track goes, that's something to keep an eye on. And in the short term, let's see how long this westward motion continues from the National Hurricane Center, right? Because, at some point it's going to have to start shifting west-northwest for this track to verify. So right now it's still moving west, and we'll see if that continues as we go into tonight. So this is a look at the, the cone in a little bit more detail. This is the 4 p.m. cone, and you can see, at the end of the cone there, this, like I was saying just now, if you would take this National Hurricane Center cone and kind of extend it, you'd probably get something coming in like this. This is Panama City. Here's Point St. Joe, Apalachicola, all these areas. But you can see how far the the cone extends here over to the west. So if you go over here a little bit, technically got people in Pensacola, and we got a lot of followers there. you're in the cone. Fort Walton, you're in the cone. Destin, of course, in the cone. And you extend it even more to the west over here. You're not quite in the cone yet, but if you extend the cone as far as the next update, you might be in the cone. So a lot of folks along the Gulf Coast need to watch this thing because nobody's in the clear just yet. But it's important to stress that nothing really strong is out there either. So don't be very concerned, but be vigilant. Let's watch this thing, over the next couple of days. So all the folks along the Florida Panhandle certainly got to keep an eye on this as you are in the National Hurricane Center's cone of uncertainty currently. So something to certainly watch for in the next couple of days. Let's see what's going on here on the on here. Good to see you, Angela, in here. Thanks, Julie, from watching from Pensacola. Good afternoon, Jerry. Good to see you on here. Thank you, Renee, for the stars. I appreciate that. Phil as well. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good evening, Charlotte. Thanks for joining on here. Let's see. Lisa, appreciate that. How you doing, Barbara from Slidell? Cindy from good to see you on here as well. Stacy, thank you. Let's see. Weaker tends to move more west. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes the weaker storm does trend a little bit more to the west, kind of drifts in that direction, Anthony. Something to keep an eye on as it gets a little bit disrupted, I'm sure, by the Dominican Republic and Hispaniola there in the next couple of days. So certainly something to watch for. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. So yeah, that's the latest on what is potential tropical cyclone number 6. Could become Fred by tonight's update, the 10 p.m. update. That remains to be seen. Let's just wait to see what the National Hurricane Center thinks. We'll see that motion. But right now, the best, the National Hurricane Center, by the way, at the end of it, the 2 p.m. mark right there on the cone, they have it at 60 miles per hour currently as far as the intensity. That would be a strong tropical storm. But again, intensity modeling, intensity forecast are very hard. They struggle with that still. That could be weaker. That could be a little bit stronger. If it's at 60 and they're projecting that, could this get to 75 and be a hurricane? Certainly could. Something to watch for, in the long term of this. So, everyone from the western portion, Florida Panhandle, even Mississippi Gulf Coast, Alabama coast right now, everybody needs to watch this. Southeast Louisiana, I keep an eye on it. Look, if it takes that southern track, certainly there could be some effects. And there's a lot to be determined with this thing right now. Nothing's set in stone. The most likely scenario is going to be Florida Panhandle or the Florida Peninsula there, but a lot of scenarios still in play. So something we're going to have to keep an eye on. So that's the latest on potential tropical cyclone number 6. Lots to go right now. It's Tuesday and it's not supposed to get into the Gulf till this Saturday. So that's 4 or 5 days. Still to go. So that means a lot of stuff can still happen, right? And it's got this trek coming through the islands that we're going to have to watch for, and it's going to be disrupted big time as it goes over Hispaniola by tomorrow afternoon. Good news, I guess, for the islands right now, though, is that they're only dealing with a tropical storm. That's not a strong hurricane that's going to be moving into the area, so that is certainly good news for them, although they could still see some rainfall issues and some flash flooding is going to be possible. Moving forward with this over the next 24 hours or so. So that's the latest on PTC 6, likely to become Fred probably pretty soon. Thank you guys for joining for this update. I'll continue to keep y'all posted on the page. Stay with the page. Share this video if you'd like to. Otherwise, I will see you soon again for another live update. Thank you guys for joining this evening.